Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and I'm excited to introduce the continuation of the New Man series. This is part three of Masculinity in American Prisons and Policing. And I want to be honest with you all. A lot of what I do at Soul Focus Group really feels like a dream come true to me. It really does. Just the opportunity to create what we're creating and to be able to have the kinds of conversations that we can have as part of these, episodes, these podcast episodes that we share with you. And this one is very much a dream come true. I think being able to have an open, honest, vulnerable conversation with Devon, who I consider to be a friend. Up until now, we've only known each other while he was incarcerated and I went in as a visitor. And then Anwar, who I have known a lot less time, but also considered to be a friend. And just to be able to have a conversation with somebody that was a police officer for 10 years and someone that was incarcerated for more than 20 really is a dream come true for me. Even just having Devon on the outside, being able to have this conversation is a dream come true. What really struck me about this episode that you're about to listen to, several things, really listen for the similarities of the way that masculinity plays out in what we call a very toxic way, right? How in both policing and prisons, right? It's really powerful how there's such similarity. There's post-traumatic stress in both. There's a lack of prioritizing mental health in most, and it's really surprising to me when you listen to really which of these areas we aren't prioritizing mental health in. I'm gonna hold that as a little bit of a surprise for you. What also really stood out for me is the brilliance of both of these men. They are both absolutely brilliant, and neither of them was going to be able to fully realize their brilliance and their genius in the institutions of criminal justice, either as a person who is incarcerated or as a person who was in the police force. And it took leaving both of those environments for them to really begin to realize their brilliance. That's what I was struck with so much. I got emotional re-listening to this, and that is because just the rawness, the vulnerability, and then the hopefulness of the way they both lay out their journey to healing, which is a model for all of us. So sit back and enjoy part three and the last part of this riveting series.
So what I really wanted to get into next, you all, is I really wanted to get into like the socialization of what it meant to be a man, both inside a prison and also in the police force. Because I think both of those, I imagine as somebody that's an outsider in both of those areas, but also having interacted a lot. I've interacted a lot with police and interacted even more inside a prison. And, Devon, I feel like I should tell the audience that, we didn't meet in the waiting room. We met, like, I had to walk all the way inside the prison,
Right.
like past the waiting room, past the gym, past the yard, through the yard into like the very center of the prison. So when I went inside, I was all the way inside, right? Not in where the cells were, but I was inside in the prison activity building. And so I felt what it felt like, but I also felt like we were kind of sheltered. And I also mostly came up with women too, like almost exclusively. Like there were times when other men would come up, but I was often the only man and I'd come up with women. And I remember them saying to me like, oh, when we go up into prison, like everybody treats us so nice. Right. I'm like, hello, like, you do understand why? Like I don't get that same vibe, right? So I wonder if we could.
Here's Martin.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Hey, Mary, come here.
Exactly.
They didn't care about you, Martin. They didn't care about you.
No, not at all, man. They'd be like, they'd hold their hand out, like slap my hand real quick, and they go right past me. Queen, like, exactly like what you just said. It was like, I mean, like, yeah, he's cool and everything, and he comes up on a regular basis. But mostly my job was to bring Mary up and to bring the other women up, because, and I get it too. And I actually spent a little time in my last job in Seattle. I spent a little time going up to women's prisons and recruiting women for the program that I was running, the transitional housing program I was running. And I had a similar feeling when I was in there. I got it. Like, I always got it, but I really felt it, right? So I just, both of these seem like hyper masculine institutions to me, where you all were, even though there were some women, on the force, but it was a small percentage, I'm sure. Most of the time you were there, Anwar. And then I know there were some women administrators and some women officers, inside the prison. But if you all could just start talking a little bit about what was that masculine socialization in those environments.
I mean, I would say for me, yeah, well, it was similar because you had, like Devin brought up earlier, you had the protection of the law, or you had the law behind you. But even then, those messages were still there. Those messages of having to put emotions to the side, or having to not even see the emotions in other people. I think that was the most dangerous one to me, to not be able to recognize the humanity and the emotions in somebody else. Because in the process of someone being violent, you're having to do all that, right? You're having to put all that to the side to be able to act upon the thing that you're going to do to somebody else. So for me, I think I would say I would see a lot of similarities. Yeah, I wasn't directly told to be violent at times, but it was the response that I was taught to show if somebody was to try to come at me or try to come at another officer.
Right.
It was rare that again, I really, to be quite frank with you, part of myself as an officer connecting with people really became when I trained to become a hostage negotiator. And a large part of that was because I was truly taught to listen.
Right.
And I was truly taught to be empathetic. Something that I know maybe as a man, as a young man, as a Latino man, and as an officer, I was not taught to do. So I think about often that those failed relationships that I had in my life, and that they failed because I was not empathetic enough or at all.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about almost not so when I say law enforcement, I would say like the COs, the officers inside of the prison, right? And then being in prison again just reinforced emotion wasn't acceptable, and it was all about respect. And so when I'm thinking about hearing what Anwar's saying as far as law enforcement, like you're not taught to explicitly be violent, but you are going to respect the law. You're going to respect the rules. And if you don't, like the result of that, or the consequence of not respecting the rule or respecting the law, is violence, right? And that's the expectation. And so it's like almost the same thing on the inside, where it's not about emotion is never a part of it. In prison, it's really like showing any type of vulnerability is considered a weakness. And that's on both sides, right? There's no opportunity for you to connect with an officer on a human level, because doing that is considered a weakness. Staff are trained not to talk. Like Martin, you can talk to this, because as you were going in as a volunteer, they train you. Don't trust them. Don't make any type of connection. And so it's the same thing for the staff. The staff are taught, don't trust that they're going to do something to you. Don't show any type of care or concern for their well-being. They're there to follow the rules that you put into place. And if they don't follow those rules, then there's an expectation of some type of enforcement, which is usually physical. And as a side of it, as a prisoner, again, now I have to constantly worry about my experience with the correctional officer, and then on the same time, the environment that I'm in. And it's so racialized, it's politicized, what groups you're from, what race you're a part of. And it's like this constant chess game where like emotion has no part in it. Like it actually is it is a weakness to even think about expressing emotion. And so it becomes really hard to tap into it. And I think that's what was so beautiful about the BPC space was like where we could, like you said, like we didn't agree on everything and we could have knockdown, drag out arguments that didn't result in violence. Right. And so that began to create a space where emotionally you could go through a range of feelings and still at the end of the day know that Martin was still showing up out of love for the circle and for the individuals that were in that space. And so I was just thinking about that. But just man, it's no matter what side of it you're on, whether it's law enforcement or it's in the streets or when you get into prison, it's like emotion, vulnerability are actually like discouraged from going on. And then to hear what you were saying, Anwar, about being in a negotiator position, it's like you're taking the time to communicate and connect with the person to like to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah, bro, and that's what made me become truly more of an, and I consider more of a successful police officer. Actually, I in one of the podcasts that I did with Martin, I moved away from being a police officer and a law enforcer to a peace officer.
Yeah.
Because that's what I saw my job and my role as. I saw it more as, bringing those emotions to the forefront without, and I say it carefully, without putting safety at risk, not only for myself, but also for those who I work with and the people that I worked with as well. Because, those are huge things. And I love the fact that you brought up emotions in how we have to bring those up. Right. A lot of the work that I do with the youth here at the high school or outside of the high school, it's about reclaiming your emotions. And I say reclaiming because I feel like we gave them away or we put them to the side, but it's reclaiming, pulling them back in and saying, and owning them with passion, with love, and with care, instead of just letting them go and continuing to put them to the side without really reflecting on how problematic that can be for our lives.
Yeah.
Devon, I have a lot of memories of being inside, and I want to ask Devon a question, and then I want to ask you a version of it too. So I have a lot of memories of even specific conversations or specific things I heard, right? And as you both were talking, especially as you were talking, Devon, I remember hearing this man say one time, he said there's a lot of different ways to make it through your time. It's a lot of different ways to make it through your sentence, a lot of different ways to survive inside of prison, basically. And I remember him saying very specifically, he said, you can do your time like a man. He said, you can do your time like a punk.
Right.
He said, you can do your time as a snitch, or you can do your time on the pill line. Right. And that is coming back to me as both of you were talking, because it was implicit as to what it meant to be a man. And the first thing that was brought up against as a comparison was a punk. Right. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that dynamic as I remember. And that's not out of line for me to say that, right? I mean, that's something that you heard. A reality. That's something that was talked about a lot, right?
Before you even get to prison, once you realize you're going to prison and you're sitting in the county jail, that's what people are telling you. Like there's only a few ways that you can do time, and don't be these other ones other than the stand-up guy who's a convict. And this is what a convict does, right? And so, it's like toxic masculinity on steroids, right? You have to, you're going to be the most aggressive, or you're going to prove to everybody that you're not the guy that they want to try to take advantage of. And then if any vulnerability, any weakness, you're a punk, you're these things. Or like they were saying, the pill line, you have people who, they self-medicate throughout that whole time. But it's like, and then it's really about, if I have to go into this space and spend any amount of time, a significant amount of time, and I want to get through it, how do I have to show up? And so talking earlier about like in childhood or even in your teen years, not having a choice, a lot of the times you feel like you don't have a choice. I have to do this if I want to survive. And so you're constantly operating with survival strategies. There's nothing resilient or healthy about the way that you're showing up. And so people, are constantly, again, you almost forget how to tap into your emotion because you're in a hypervigilant stage the entire time you're in there. right? It's real survival. And I can only assume whether you're on patrol or in law enforcement, it's almost the exact same thing. There's an expectation as a 20-year-old going in here, like, my people rely on me. This is the way that you're a cop. You look out for your brother, the blue line, all of these things that are told to a person when they're going through training and when they're going through what they're going through. Like, you don't have a choice. If you want to be accepted by your peers in this space, then this is the way you show up.
Anwar.
Thank you for bringing that up, Devin. I mean, even you brought up a huge thing, the resilience piece.
Right.
I feel like we misuse that word so much, and we misunderstand it, and we miseducate the youth with that word so much, and just the capacity to just bounce back from things that are tough.
Yeah.
Well, we're all gonna bounce back at our own times, but I feel like in our society, it's almost like, no, I want you to bounce back now at the snap of the fingers. Be resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Man, give me some time. Give me some time. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. When it comes to those messages, what you just said, Martin, about the pill line and to be a punk, all that stuff was said in different ways.
Right.
Yeah, all that stuff was said in different ways.
Tell us more. Say more how it played out.
Even you saying the officer friendly, bro. If you say that around a group of officers, they're automatically gonna think that you're not man enough, that you're in the wrong field to begin with. You think about even the posters or pictures or images you type into SWAT team, they're gonna show you these buff dudes. They're gonna show you like what our society thinks a man looks like. And that's how they all function. They're all out there to beat some ass and to show them justice and to show them all this stuff. And unfortunately, as a younger police officer, when you go in, you go in with good intentions, but you're also going in with this mindset of, I'm going to soak it all in. Well, you don't realize that you're soaking some of that toxic water too, that you're drinking some of that water that, you know what, you didn't even think about what was in that cup to begin with. And that was a large part for me. I would be around these circles of conversations about, I recall this officer talking about back in the day, some of the shirts that they had, that they would wear on the uniform, and in the back of the shirt, there would be like a slogan that, if you run, you bleed. I mean, this is stuff that they were talking about with pride. And then you see the younger officers in those circles with their eyes so big and almost glorifying it internally.
Yeah.
So then in return, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
But so it's again, it's that choice of, man, I feel like I got to act like this. Otherwise, I'm not part of this group. And I knew officers that were outcasted. I knew you could tell those officers that were not part of those groups. So almost it's like you have to get along to move along.
Yeah, that's. I mean, again, it's like that being ostracized, and just the fear of it makes a person respond. When, like I said, like you were saying, like you really don't have a choice, especially if that's going to be your career, right? As a young person stepping into that space, if you don't show up immediately the right way, the fear of being outside of that circle and then dealing with the threats and the harm that is potential, whether that's in the community or with your peers, is enough to make a person feel like they don't have a choice.
The choice, man. So, but okay, I have a couple of things I want to say about choice. Anwar, I want you to expand just a little more, because you said like each of those things that I said. Like, what was the pill line? What was the police equivalent of the pill line?
You were talking about there are ways to make it in prison, and it was through those things that you talked about. For in law enforcement, the ways to make it was, again, to show that you were out there to get the action, that you were out there to get the bad guys, that you were out there to prove yourself through those physical ways. And that's how you looked at some of the most ranking, the higher ranking people in policing. You're going for that spot, you're going for that captain role, you're going for the detective role. And a lot of the conversations that surrounded officers that got to those points had to do with being manly, had to do with proving their manhood in that process of going up and going up the rank. So that's what I mean on in the sense of survival within the career aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
It is showing up again as manly.
Was there, so like the pill line, just for our listeners, and Devin, obviously you can say a lot more than me on it. I will say, I'll just say my experience and then you can say it more. But I remember going into a prison one time, not the one I would usually go up to. We ended up going into 5, 6, 7 different prisons over the 15 years that I was doing this. But this was one we went to like super early in the morning. It's called McNeil Island. And you take a boat over there, right? And we took a boat over there to do a 2-day training. And we got there at like 6 a.m. And we come in and, the guards leading us down the hall to where we're going to be. And I saw like 150 men lined up along the wall. And I asked somebody what it was. And they said, that's the pill line. So at like 6, 7 in the morning, dudes are lined up to, and talk a little bit more about that. Like what kind of stuff were they getting? And this was how people essentially made it through the day, right?
Yeah. So I think any type of I don't want to say like a psychotropic drug, I believe, like Thorazine. Right. I mean, just a range of any drug that would either put them to sleep through the day or just totally numb them out. And like that became, there was a lot of guys too. I don't want to make it sound like everybody, because there's a lot of folks that are like aging out in prison and have severe medical issues, and so like that was a part of it. But it was there's also a large amount of people who, that's again how a variety of medications that affect a person's mental health, and then like there's a dependence that's created with these guys. Right. So yeah, I don't know the specific drugs, but I do know that it's a range of them. It's a range.
Like antidepressants, like you said, Thorazine, which would just knock you out. Yeah. It was Xanax. It was all of that, right? And it was and it would just like basically just numb you to whatever you were going to experience or see that day, right? And that's how some people chose to survive it. And so, Anwar, I'm wondering if there, was there a version of that on the force, like a version of like self-medication just to get through the trauma and the violence that you would see?
Absolutely. You look at a lot of our data within alcoholism, substance abuse, or abusing some of those medications that they're prescribed. I mean, when I was in law enforcement, I had horrible back pain from sitting in the vehicle to all the equipment that I was wearing, and I knew officers that were on pain pills from it. So, but yeah, I mean, you look at our statistics. I mean, law enforcement officers are in the top, I want to say top 10, top 5 careers for suicide in the United States.
Right.
So overall, the stuff that I knew guys that would work dang near 20 hours, not only to kind of escape from whatever was going on at home, but they saw that as a way to just kind of stay on this survival mode. So think about it. To those officers that work that much, or those officers that don't deal with the trauma that they're seeing on their day to day, how detrimental that could be to coming into contact with those people that are needing you the most, that are there to kind of count on you, and to really rely on you too. I was just talking to a friend of mine who was an officer, and we were talking about, I mean, I'm going to be explicit here, unfortunately, but we were talking about a homeless guy a guy experiencing homelessness that laid on a railroad track, put his head on the railroad track, and the train came and decapitated his head. So we come across, or we get the call, hey, the train conductor calls us and says, hey, I feel like I just hit somebody or something.
Right.
So we get there, and right there, I mean, you see the guy. It was a perfect clean cut. There was no blood. I mean, there's nothing, just the head separated from the body itself. And we're all there joking about it. We're all there, again, teasing each other and making just jokes about it. And then we go to the next call.
Yeah.
It was a violent domestic. And then the next call was an arson. Yeah. So at what point did we have time to truly think about what we just saw? We literally just saw a human body, a human head being separated from its body.
Yeah.
And years later, sorry, bro, but years later, I want to talk to my friend about it, and he's like, what are you talking about? I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Bro, you're just saying that to say it because you're wanting to block that image from your head, but it's still there.
Right. I was just going to say, like, the parallels of hearing that and in prison, right? Seeing all kinds of violence taking place. And as soon as it's done, people are laughing, joking about, oh man, you see how he whooped his ass, or see what happened to him. And like, there's no time to process any of it. Because if you were to say like, man, that was really effed up, they'd be like, man, what's wrong with you? You know? And yeah, so yeah, that's, again, like, no matter what side of it you're on, there's still that expectation, like, not to process it, to stuff it. And it, like, that's what we're taught when it comes to trauma, is to stuff it, not deal with it. It'll go away. And then, I mean, think about it though. You all were responding to so many calls day in and day out that at some point, do you begin to forget the things that you see, or are there some that stick out more than others? Because I'm thinking about in prison, there's a lot of violent stuff that I saw, and I might not be able to recall some of it. You know what I mean? Because it's so constant and ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think at some point you block them off. I think the ones, the more gruesome ones definitely stick out with you, definitely stay with you. I mean, you know what's crazy is as soon as I left the police department, and almost as soon as I stopped being a police officer, I stopped having those nightmares of calls that I was a part of.
Wow.
I haven't had any, none of them at all. I remember having vivid dreams of me being in a situation where I had to pull my gun out and pull the trigger, and nothing would come out of that gun.
Whoa.
And I would take all the heat. Or I would remember, I would have dreams of answering the calls like that, of someone being sexually abused, or an arson, somebody dying inside of a house. Yeah. And then I stopped and they were gone.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't know if, I don't know, Anwar, if do they talk about officers having PTSD? Because I know that, I know in the circles that we ran in, Devon, we talked about you all having PTSD just from being inside,
Yeah.
Do they talk about officers having PTSD just from the job? Is that something that's talked about, Anwar?
Martin, they don't even talk about officers having a mental health.
Wow.
They don't even talk about officers truly checking in and not only checking in with somebody, but checking in with one another. Just like Devon was talking about earlier, going and trying to talk to somebody about some of this stuff. I never did that. I never felt that I could. I never felt safe enough that I could really do something like that. We would joke about it, and I think that was our own way of wanting to talk about it. Wow. But it never went beyond just joking about it. It never got to a place where, hey, man, I want to check in. Like, how are you feeling? That call was pretty bad to go to. How are you feeling? And like Devon was talking about, at times we would go from call to call to call to call. So there was no time. I mean, I would get home and kind of sit outside and just let the air hit me in the face before I went in and go to sleep. I worked night shift majority of the time. So there you add another piece of it. Your brain shouldn't be up at that moment, shouldn't be up at that time.
For real.
So think about all the imbalances that are happening to the body.
Devon, I said, yeah, thank you, Anwar, for sharing that. And I don't want to just transition on, because what you shared is really heavy. And the fact that this is who we're entrusting with, like, quote unquote, keeping the peace, with, mediating domestic violence issues. I mean, the things that we put on police officers, and we don't acknowledge the trauma that they and they go through and you went through. It's not cool. And it's part of the reason why it's such a setup. It's part of the reason why we're in the situation that we're in, because we're not acknowledging the trauma of the people that we're asking to, quote unquote, keep the peace. So I want to hold that. And then, Devon, I said that we, the circle, literally the circle that we were in, the BPC circle, the sacred circle, we would talk about PTSD. And I know later on in my time there as a volunteer, that some of the administrators started talking about, like, cognitive behavioral therapy and different things like that.
Yeah.
But in general, how much was talked about in terms of PTSD or trauma inside of prison?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we were, folks had made it a point to talk about mental health. And like you mentioned, the Department of Corrections response was this cognitive behavior therapy that they were going to actually, force people to take. And we know that it requires professionals to do that, or, someone at least see your humanity and our experience with DLC was that they were going to hire a staff member who may have been a former correction officer to implement the curriculum, and it would be ineffective. But prior, like right around the time that I got close to leaving and transitioning back into community in about 2018, before I went to camp, we had been working with community to actually begin that process of addressing trauma. And so it was community that came in and was able to work with us, develop some workshops, and begin that journey. And I think that's where a lot of those brothers are at right now in those spaces, are trying to create, before COVID hit, really trying to be, like a peer-to-peer processing model so that folks can actually address their trauma. And that's when I left, that was the work that a lot of folks were doing, and trying to make sure that BPC was creating that space for us to begin to think about what it would look like to heal and move through.
I mean, I know that's not the case of every prison, but it is powerful to me to think about the fact that that was happening more intentionally than at the police department.
Yeah, that's crazy.
At least where we were and where you were. And again, I know that's not everybody's story who's incarcerated.
Yeah, true.
So one of the things I'm getting from this conversation, is that, I mean, you all both described PTSD that you had as children, going through the violence that you went through, and teenagers. And then, Anwar, you talked a lot about the PTSD that you went through and what you witnessed, right? And Devon, obviously you did too, and all of that. And, so what I really wanted to close out with, as we end this conversation, which has been absolutely incredible, by the way, what are you both doing to actively heal? Like where are you right now in terms of how are you actively healing from everything that you've gone through? And, I just want to open it up to both of you, because I really want us to leave, for yourselves, but also to the people that listen to this who might know or be police officers or have been incarcerated, or, just what is that active healing process looking like for both of you, as detailed as you can make it?
So for me, it's a number of things. First, and just working with Dustin has been a really powerful part of the process. And like recently, I wrote myself a letter forgiving myself for the harms I caused myself, and I really just out of realizing that without that forgiveness and being able to move through that, it's going to be hard to love me. And if I can't love myself, it's hard for me to show up and love other people the way they deserve it. I'm in my head a lot, and that's what prison and life in the out there in the streets really does, is it keeps you in your head and not in your body. So you're always thinking about these different scenarios. And so like, I'm really learning how to drop in and be in my body, whether that's through meditation, or you said it earlier, you were talking about like being in nature. I was laughing because I'm like, man, this is like really what it means. It's like, it's a humbling. I went to Olympic National Park the other day, and just looking at these huge trees that have been here for hundreds of years. And it just made me appreciate, my time here in this space, and how it was humbling, and like how I need to make the most of it. And that this tree just being still and letting all the resources and things that it needed come to it, here it's been here for hundreds of years. And kind of thinking about how I'm out. Sometimes I can get caught up in myself trying to chase things down and hurry up and make things happen. I end up, being frustrated. And so I think, meditation, working with dust, but also, man, being intentional about connecting with some of these guys that I know who are experiencing the same things, transitioning back into community, making time to tap in with them, and just having a conversation about how they're feeling, what they're up to. And because what I'm finding is that we're all experiencing a lot of the same things, but we're using different strategies around how to move through it. And so being able to pick people's brains or share my own practices kind of allows me to skill up. And then lastly, I'm fortunate that I work at a restorative justice agency right now. And, we're really doing a lot of work around processing trauma and developing resilient practices that are like life affirming and help a person, can help me get away from, not emoting, but taking the time to feel something and how to put a word to it and not being judged for it. So like really being intentional about the people I'm around who help me continue to evolve and grow emotionally. So for me, that's what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. But in all transparency, like it's a messy ass process, right? Some
Absolutely.
days are good, some days aren't so good. And so like for me, real quick, for me, what I try to do is like if out of a 7-day week, I figure if I can get 4 days of good practice of, embodying the things that I want to aspire to be, then I'm doing good, man. So I just shoot for four
Beautiful.
days a week. If I can get 7, that's great. But I hate the whole idea around perfection. It's a facade. So I just I just show up the best way I can. If I get 4 out of 7, I'm good, man.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. Anwar, what would you say? What are you doing to actively heal from all that you've experienced?
I wish one of the things I wish right now is that we were doing this live on a video or in person, because the whole time Brother Devon's talking, I'm just smiling because the similarities continue.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I was gonna start with saying, forgiveness. That's been a huge part of my journey. That's been a huge part of some of my process and my progress is learning how to forgive and also forgive myself too. I'm probably one of my worst cheerleaders. I don't even count myself as a cheerleader at a time for myself. So yeah, it's been a process of that. Conversations like this are definitely transformational for me. They definitely allow me to open up more about some of my own trauma. So again, I appreciate you both for listening and those who are out there listening too. But yeah, these conversations were not allowed at home. Were not displayed at home. So for me to be a part of this, I'm always thankful. I'm always a little anxious because I get to a place of what am I about to say, and what little piece of myself am I going to give out there to the world?
Yeah.
But I've come to a realization that I have to start opening up. I have to start processing and working through those traumas, and then also a lot of the work that I do with the youth has also helped me too. It's pretty amazing for me to see that when I work with the youth, as they're talking to me, as they're expressing their hurts and their pains, my eyes just light up because I see a little bit of myself in them too, in their experiences. So that helps me, and that motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing. And I agree with Brother Devon. There's times that I go in the room and the first thing that I say to a group of adults or teenagers, I'll say, "Practice makes what?" And right away they go to say perfect. And I'm like, no, it doesn't make perfect because there is no such thing. That's why we're practicing. So it ain't about perfection. It's about truly seeing yourself as who you are in finding who you are too. So part of my process too has been finding myself in this messiness too.
Yeah, that's beautiful, both of you. I think something that all three of us share is also that forgiveness process. That I've actively gone through a forgiveness process for people that have harmed me in my life, and also people I've harmed, and most importantly, the harm I've done to myself, which is a lot. I've done a lot of harm to myself, and that's the one that's often hardest for us, is to be on our own side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we close out today, I just want to thank you both so much. This has been like an amazing experience for me to have this conversation with both of you, to see the similarities. And, I can't help but say this, man. I'm a child of the 70s, and like one of my favorite songs of all time is Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. And there's a line in there that says, every cop's a criminal and all the sinners saints.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of been going through my head this whole conversation, right? How easily one path could have been the other, right? For both of you. And even given different circumstances, even for me, I always thought it was one of the most humbling things for me. And when I say humble, I don't mean making myself less than, but by being humble, I mean being most aligned with myself and understanding my place in the universe. Was when I would go up, Devon, would be how easily, if my life had been different, I could have been sitting in that circle as a participant and not as a volunteer.
Right.
And I can't say, Anwar, that I ever would have been a cop, because I don't think that was ever going to be an option for me in this lifetime. But just how easily, our life can take such a different path, even with so many similarities. And then the other thing is, we talked a lot about choices. And one of the things that we say at Soul Focus Group is knowing that you have choices is a source of power for yourself, right? And in the conversations that I heard from you all and in your evolution, one of the things that I'm hearing from you all is that you have learned over time that you do have choices that you may have thought you never had.
For sure.
And I think, Anwar, the choice for you to leave the police force, Devon, for you to make the choices that you made while you were inside, to do everything you could to get an early release, to, go through a transformational process in what I would imagine would be one of the most difficult places ever to transform.
For sure.
Right? Because there's so many pressures on you to stay the same.
Yeah.
But both of you, I think, are such good models at the personal power of knowing you have different choices and then acting on them. So I just want to thank you both so much and just give each of you an opportunity to say a last thing in closing, and then we'll end the episode.
Go ahead, Anuar.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you all for listening again. I mean, it's been beautiful. I keep enjoying and I keep growing from these conversations. Brother Devon, I hope you and I meet someday in person, and we can continue to see. Because, brother, I already say that even though I don't see you, I feel you.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's huge. But thank you all too.
Yeah, I just want to echo that sentiment. I'm definitely grateful for this opportunity to share space with you all. Y'all, man, powerful words and thoughts. It's just good to be in a place where we can have these conversations. I'm definitely looking forward to meeting you, Brother Anwar and Martin. We need to meet up. It's been such a long time.
Yes.
But yeah, just thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be in space with y'all.
Absolutely. I'll be out there soon, and I'm making sure this time I see you. So, I just want to say to both of you, I love both of you. I love that both of you are in my life, and I love that we're able to model a way of having conversations that represents what it means to be a new man, a new way of being a man, where we can maintain that identity of being a man, and yet create a new paradigm of what it means, and have it be about a large range of emotions, have it be about being a loving person, an empathetic and a sensitive person. And I feel that from both of you. So I want to just say that it's an honor. I feel like I'm on this journey. I know I'm on this journey with both of you, as well as other men in my life, and it's an honor to be able to be on that journey. We want to tell all of you listening that we love you too, and we care about you. We're so excited you're on this journey with us. Every day is exciting and adventurous for all of us. We have so many things that we're offering. We just can't wait for you to come to soulfocusgroup.com. So many different products, and I would say products, but trainings and workshops and online courses are coming pretty soon, and all different kinds of things. And we will be doing, I want to be really clear too, we are going to be doing some probably first virtual, and then over time we'll be doing some new man workshops where we're going to be having this opportunity to have these conversations with you all, and so I want to make sure you all know that. We're just so excited for you to be on this journey with us. And so we say to all of you, we want you to stay safe, stay well, and most of all, stay soul